So we were discussing God's battle plan and the CIA's battle plan, and we went over some weapons and some tactics and some defenses. And so now I just want to talk about what's our role in this mission. We talked about the mission, the CIA mission and God's mission. So what's your role in the mission? And I think the first thing you have to realize is that when you are an agency operations officer, for example, when you go overseas to conduct a mission, then one of the first things you have to do is check in with the ambassador. And the book Veil talks about a lot of these covert action programs and countries that they're in and checking in with ambassadors, and you can always read details there, but the first thing is go see the ambassador, and the first thing he'll want to know is, what are you really doing here? So he wants to know, what's your plan? What's your battle plan? And then the second thing he wants to know is, are you going to cause me any trouble? Because unfortunately, when you do covert actions, sometimes they start out covert, means they're secret, but before you know it, they just keep expanding, and things get out of control, and you make the newspapers. A good example, again, in the book in Veil, was the Iran-Contra affair with Reagan and Ollie North. It started out as a simple covert program in trying to undermine, with the Contras, the Nicaraguan government, which was communist and so close to us. But in the end, it turned out to be this very complicated thing involving Israel and Egypt and Iran and Ollie North and selling weapons and funding the Contras when we said we weren't funding the Contras, and you get bad news. And I showed you a picture earlier where I was standing on the Khyber Pass, Afghanistan and Pakistan, and obviously the agency covert program was to provide support to the Mujahideen, which were trying to overthrow the Soviets. The Mujahideen, the Afghanistan people, hated us about as bad as they hated the Soviets, but because we were helping them overthrow the Russians, then they accepted our, support and our money. And obviously, I spent some time there. But as you look back on it, we overthrew the evil empire of the Soviet Union, but later on that just came back to haunt us, and everything fell apart again, to include eventually our withdrawal from there after billions of dollars that we spent. And nothing's really any better off. It just goes back to what I said before. We spend a lot of money, we try to influence all these people, but in the end, we can't do it. But as a Christian, we can influence people, and we can save people one at a time. And so let's take all this money that we're spending overseas for all these different things, and as we look back on them, none of them, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, none of them worked out. And let's spend that on our people here. Let's help people here. But as Christians also, let's try to save them, save their souls for the ultimate win that God has promised us, which is when he comes back to reign. But let's look at this position of ambassador again, because I want you to realize you have a unique role here that most people have failed to assume. So here we go. Let's look at the U.S. ambassador. By definition from the State Department, it says, an embassy is the headquarters for U.S. government representatives serving in a foreign country. It's normally led by an ambassador, who is the U.S. president's representative to the host country. So the ambassador is appointed to be the number one guy in this foreign country. In that embassy is probably 27 government agencies. Everybody reports to him. He's in charge of everything. Nothing gets done. He represents the United States of America. Now, when I was going over there, you go, wow, maybe one day I can work my way up here and I could be an ambassador. And then you realize that a lot of those positions are political appointees. They're friends of government people. They're friends of presidents. They're friends of political parties. Not all of it is dependent upon your abilities. Not saying that's true everywhere. But you go, wow, I represent the United States of America. Lots of times you go places, and it's important to keep that in mind, because people have a preconceived notion about us which is not true. And for example, when I went to Romania, they had a dictator there, Ceausescu, who was overthrown. But while he was in charge, people had no outside contact with the world. He banned all newspapers, magazines. Foreigners who came to visit couldn't interact with citizens. If you talked to a foreigner that visited your country, then the secret police took you aside, interrogated you, and lots of times you disappeared. I stayed at a hotel run by the government one time, and someone asked me, "Hey, where are you staying?" I give them the name, and they go, "Oh, that's not good. That's Ceausescu's hotel. Sometimes you check in, sometimes you check out. Most of the time you just disappear." And they said, call you in for an award sometimes, you get your award, you leave. Sometimes you never left again. So you have to understand that people have a preconceived notion. And I remember a person sitting at one time with me talking who had never been around Americans. And he and I were talking, and I remember he all of a sudden asked me, "How do you sleep at night?" I just took that as, well, I don't know why he's asking me, but I sleep fine. I have no issue sleeping. He goes, "No, how do you sleep in America?" I go, "I sleep fine." He goes, "But we hear that there's so much gunfire at night because of the crime and the unrest that you can't sleep at night because there's gunfire all the time." A preconceived notion has been told to them by the Soviets for years, and they believe it because they have no way not to believe it. So when you're representing something, just like I was representing something there, I was very conscious. I'm really the first American that these people have talked to. So I have to be very careful everything I say and do. I'm representing my country. And I remember on that same trip, we were invited to a person's house, and we were at his house, and they had never seen Americans, and my team was there, and we're all talking, and we're enjoying each other. We've been there for a while, and I noticed that one of my guys has taken his shoes off, and he's kind of got his feet kind of up on the couch. And I just remember looking, thinking, how did this happen? Because these people, they don't have everything. And that couch has been there forever. And they surely don't want his feet up on that couch. And where did he even come up with the fact that he could do that? To me, I was shocked. To him, he was being casual. But he didn't realize that everything was being scrutinized because they'd never seen Americans before. So it's important when you're representing your country that you understand that you are the image for that thing you are representing. And it's important for us to think, man, wouldn't you like to have a job instead of having to work? I'm working out here, I'm struggling just to do whatever my little job is. I'm trying to do the best I can. But wouldn't it be something to be appointed by the president to represent the United States of America? That's a big, big job. But I maintain that there's a bigger job that you failed to accept, and that's this job. God's ambassador. God's ambassador is bigger than the government's ambassador. God's ambassador, 2 Corinthians 5-20. We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. God tells us we're his representatives here. What could be more important than representing God? Now, a key fact here is this, is that it says an embassy is normally serving in a foreign country. But you have to realize that we're serving in a foreign country here because Satan is actually in charge here right now on this earth. He's not going to win the ultimate battle. God's already told us that when Christ was sacrificed on the cross, we won the ultimate battle because there's going to be a second coming, And Satan and all the people that are following him are going to be cast out of this earth in judgment. But right now, that hasn't happened yet. And so as we read here where God is asking us to be his ambassador in 2 Corinthians 5:20, as you stay in 2 Corinthians and you go back to chapter 4, and God is talking to his people, and in it it says, therefore, since through God's mercy we have this ministry, we do not lose heart. So even though we know Satan is in charge here, we don't lose heart. We have a ministry. Rather, we have renounced secret and shameful ways. We do not use deception, nor do we distort the word of God. It's back to my mug. You know, we're always trying to distort things, make counter accusations. On the contrary, by setting forth the truth plainly, we commend ourselves to every man's conscience in the sight of God. And even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. We are foreigners here because we've been blinded. And who's blinded? It's Satan. For we do not preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. So we've been appointed to be ambassadors in a foreign nation. Eventually we're going to win. Don't get confused. But right now, there's many references in the Bible where Satan is still in charge. God's in ultimate charge, but right now during this period, we've already won, but during this period, he's in charge. That's a hard truth, but we have to keep that in mind, that God wants us to be his ambassador, and he wants us to represent him. Now, you can't represent God when you say, yes, I'm a Christian, and then you come to church, which you should, but then you have no outward appearance to anybody who's never seen a Christian before. They would never know you were a Christian. In other words, you're representing us. But if I see you on the street or at work and every other word that comes out of your mouth is a profanity, or every other action that you do is something to belittle someone or beat someone else down, or you spend all these times talking about, oh yes, I'm married, but I have a girlfriend. You can't say that you are representing God. You're not God's ambassador. He wants you to be that. But we have to continue to grow as Christians so that we can accept this vital role in God's plan as we go to save the world. Accept your role as the ambassador.